We are so glad that you've chosen to join us today by listening to this message. We hope it blesses you and encourages you. We also pray that you understand that this is not a replacement of the local church. We hope that you find yourself in a local body of believers to be encouraged the way God has planned to knit us together in the local church. We hope you enjoy the next 30 minutes. May the Lord bless you and keep you.
Pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Psalm 23, verse 4, even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I'll fear no evil, for you're with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. That's what we're going to look at today, guys. Even though. It makes me think back, Daniel, right? Daniel and the Lion's Den are one of our favorite children's stories, at least my son's favorite, because he loves lions and the possibility of them eating people. But even though he was threatened with, you will be killed if you continue to pray to God instead of to this king. Even though, it says he still prayed 3 times a day and he went to his room in private and he prayed, even though the threat of death was imminent, right? Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, or Rakshak and Benny if you prefer VeggieTales. They were threatened with, look, you have to bow down to this altar or you're going to be cast into the fiery furnace. And they said, my God, our God can save us, our God will save us, and even if he doesn't, even though we may be cast into this fiery furnace, we will not bow down to your God. Paul and Silas, right? They were preaching the gospel. The Jews got mad, beat them, and threw them in prison. Even though there was this threat on their life, we're going to throw you in prison, we're going to beat you, we're going to chain you up. Even though, it says they sang praises through the night. They were worshiping God in the middle of the night. Even though they had been thrown in jail for teaching about Jesus, they decided to worship him anyhow in the prison. Even though Stephen was being stoned to death for proclaiming the name of Jesus, he still asked for the forgiveness of his murderers in the middle of the incident. Right? Even though. My friend Esther, when I was younger, my best buddy in high school, his name was Samir. He was Indian, if you didn't guess by the name, Bhattacharya. I went to family reunions, I went to hangouts, weddings, all sorts of stuff. I became friends with one of his girl cousins. We spoke on the AOL Instant Messenger. I don't know if anybody still does that anymore. At 16, she got brain cancer. And it was cured for a year or two, and then it came back. And at 21, she passed away. And I'm at the funeral, and her parents walk up to the podium. They say, this is the day that the Lord has made. We will rejoice and be glad in it. Even though they are mourning the death of their beautiful, pageant-winning 21-year-old daughter who had become completely disfigured from cancer. Even though, right? My good friend Dewey, November 2019, got diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. At first, they're like, well, there's no hope with that. Then they said, well, there is hope. We're going to be able to do surgery on this, and it hadn't spread. You're going to be good. And then by March, through chemo, he had a stroke. He called me in rehab. He's like, I'm learning how to walk and talk again, but I have this question about Jesus in the book of Matthew. It's like, man, let's talk, Dewey. That's great. And then he just got the news a couple months ago. This is inoperable. You got a year. It's my good friend Dewey. I talked to him on the phone 2 days ago. He's like, you got a year, man. said, how are you? So I'm okay. Because even though I'm going to die from this, I have God with me. And I'm okay. Man, I've talked to him a few times since then. He's like, yeah, sure we've cried, but we're okay. We've got God with me. I don't know how people live this life without a relationship with God. I asked Dewey 2 days ago, I was like, man, can I use your story? He's like, oh my. He's like, yes, if anybody can be helped, please. So what's the common denominator with Daniel and Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, with Paul and Silas, with Stephen, with Esther and her family, my friends, and with Dewey? They recognized and experienced the presence of God in their life. And that meant that was enough no matter what came after, even though. Psalm 23 verse 4 is what we're going to look at today. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you're with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. It's powerful, guys. It's powerful. Those stories are powerful. Our God is powerful. This passage is powerful. So let's dive in. First thing I would like to say to you guys, it says, even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, even though my life is hard, even though I have these things face me that seem impossible, every valley can be walked through. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, that valley can be walked through. Every valley can be walked through. Or in the words of Winston Churchill, if you're going through hell, keep going. Don't stop there. If you're going through hell, just keep going. You're going to come out on the other side. Every valley can be walked through. This isn't the end for you. Whatever that thing facing you that you're scared, I don't want to have to reckon with, I don't want to deal with, I don't know if we're going to make it through this, you are. God is with you. Keep going. Every valley can be walked through. And some of you are sitting there like, I should know that by now, considering the valleys I've had to walk through. Yeah. Let's look at what Deuteronomy 31:6 says. I think it powerfully speaks to this. Deuteronomy 31:6 says this, be strong and courageous. Do not fear or be in dread of them, for it is the Lord your God who goes with you. He will not leave you nor forsake you. Guys, that tells me something. That we need to keep an inventory of the valleys God has walked with us through. Because we've been through some stuff. I don't care what age you're at right now. You've seen some things. You've felt some things. You've been through some things. God has walked you through a valley before. And we need to keep inventory of those things so when the next one hits, I can say, even though I had to walk through this, it wasn't the end for me. God didn't abandon me there. I made it through. He pulled me through. And I can remember those things and bring it up when I need it. There's a band called New Song. They wrote a song and it says, the same God that led you in will lead you out. And that spoke to me, 8 or 10 years ago. And it always stuck with me, that line. I don't even like the band New Song or the song. It's not my style at all. It's not my jam. But that idea is something I hold on to. The same God that led you in will lead you out. So as we looked at last week, it says he leads me in paths of righteousness, right? He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. If I'm going to follow the Lord, it might walk into some places that feels like the valley of the shadow of death, but the same God that led you in that is going to lead you out of that and bring you back to mountaintops. Because he said, do not fear, for the Lord your God goes with you. He will not leave you or forsake you. Guys, this season, right, this time, this 2020, it's been a rough go. This has been interesting. In my world, the pastor's world, pastors are quitting left and right, like a lot. They're dropping off. In our town, multiple pastors have said, we're out. Or staffs. One of my friends, his entire staff quit like June. It's like, wow. And I have other friends other pastors in town that we're out. It's been hard with my coaching circle. My coach, he coaches a lot of church planters. Last week he said I had 6 guys that had been in full-time vocational ministry said we're out. It's been a hard It's been a hard season. It's been the valley of the shadow of death, right? And I don't want to say, man, pastors have it harder than you, because as I'm thinking about this, it's like, it's been a hard season on parents. Oh my gosh, spring break was 6 months. Nobody saw that coming. So we were unprepared. we were very unprepared. We did not have that calendared in, you know. We were ready to have the normal like childcare of public school providing, and it's been a long, hard walk. It's been hard on kids that were used to going to see their friends. Because there's no one here that hasn't been walking through this, and what I'd like to say to you guys is, let's keep going together. Let's walk together. Let's pick each other up. I think it says I know it says in Proverbs, it's like, if somebody falls down but he's on his own, who's there to pick him up? But if two go together, one can pick up the other. That's why we have to keep this going. The FC groups, the small groups you're joined in, the Sunday morning group, because this is what keeps us walking, keeps us going. That even though, when I hit that, even though my marriage is in trouble, even though my kids aren't turning out the way I thought, even though I lost my job, even though I don't know what next month holds for me, I will fear no evil, for you're with me. I want that to encourage us today, because we have a lot of those even though moments in our life. And we might be in one of those right now. Number one, every valley can be walked through. Keep walking. Every valley can be walked through. Number two, fear is inevitable. Living in fear is optional. Hold on to that. Fear is inevitable. Living in fear is optional. Why is that? Well, he says, even though, fill in the blank, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. For you are with me. We have to grab a hold of that. Know that God is with you. That's the similarity in all those stories that I said. Bible stories, Old Testament, Bible stories, New Testament, Jesus stories, now and today. My friend that passed away a few years ago, my friend that has his imminent end in front of him. Even though, know that God is with you. 1 John 4:18 is very known and very used when we're talking about fear. 1 John 4:18 says this: there is no fear in love, but perfect love casts out fear. For fear has to do with punishment. And whoever fears has not been perfected in love. There's no fear in love. So if knowing God is with you equals no fear, right? Because that's what he said, I will fear no evil, for you're with me. If knowing God is with you equals no fear, what does fear equal? Lack of knowledge, lack of faith, lack of belief. I think a lot of times we're really faced with our the smallness of our ability to grasp God and his goodness. Because we do live in fear a lot of times of like, what's going to happen in this situation? What if it goes this way? What if this over here? What if that over there? And we can freak ourselves out. Guys, anxiety, mental health, biggest crisis we're facing in America right now, according to a lot of people. I spoke with a woman, a very respected doctor in town. I said, what's the number one thing that's the problem facing our kids? What do we need to worry about? She said, mental health, anxiety, fear. Like, this is crippling people. It should not be crippling the Christian community, because even though I know you're with me, even though whatever that is, it says we haven't been perfected in love. So perfect love casts out fear, and anybody that lives in fear has not been perfected in love. What does that mean? It's talking about our grasp, our understanding, and our belief of who God is and how he has loved us. And ad nauseum, I know I've said from this stage, you know, look at how great a love the Father has loved us, that we'd be called the children of God, and such we are, 1 John 3:1. Or in love is this, not that we love God, but that he loved us first. Or what will God not do for us, who he even gave up his own son for us, and what will he hold back from us? Or Christ showed his love for us, and while we were yet sinners, he died for us. Or we know that all things work together for the good of those who love God and are called according to his purpose. Like, we've heard these things. It's time to grab a hold of these things and know that fear is inevitable, but living in fear is optional because I know that God is with me, so I can choose to believe that and not live in fear. I can choose to hold on to that and remove the fear. However you want to say it, pray against the fear, cast out the fear, reject the fear. What a passage. Even though, whatever that is, I will fear no evil, for you're with me. But there's another thing that goes with that. What does that "you're with me" mean? It says there's comfort that comes with it. He says, but your rod and your staff, they comfort me. So your third point here today, how you receive God's rod and staff changes everything. How you receive it. A lot of times we wish that what it finished out with there was your provision and your problem solving, they comfort me. Your money that you provide for me and my perfect relationships you provide, they comfort me. It's just, pastors say that. It's just not from the Bible. It's from giving people what they want to hear, right? What did he say comforts him? A rod and a staff. He's using the shepherd analogy, right? We've talked about that, green pasture, still water. We're being led. He is our shepherd. We are his sheep. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. I know I've experienced this a lot in life. It might just be because of my personality and who I am. Maybe you haven't gone through this the way I have. You ever, you find out somebody's uber offended at you or mad at you, and you're like, what? Did I miss something? What happened when? I have no idea what you're saying. Maybe I'm dumb. I don't know. Maybe I don't understand humans. Not maybe. I don't understand humans. But that aside, and usually once you hash it out and you get down to the end of it, what's going to be said is, well, when you said this, when you did this, I received it this way. This is how I received it, right? This is how I took what you said. Of course, I'm sitting there saying, well, why didn't you just receive it in the way I said it? Why did you have to add in all those extra things that weren't even there? But that aside, guys, that's what we're talking about when it comes to God and his rod and his staff comforting us. How do we receive the discipline and the guidance of God? How do I receive that? Because we might be over here mad at God because he didn't pan out the way we asked him to, and he didn't fulfill all the things we told him to, and we didn't receive that rod and that staff well. Right? They had two different distinct usages, the rod and the staff for the shepherd, and they were two different tools. They made sense. The rod was for protection and discipline. King David talked about before he went to go fight the Goliath, the champion, right? He's like, I've killed bears and lions. What? Probably not with his bare hands, right? He had this awesome weapon that's what he would go after the ones that came and attacked the sheep. And he used it for discipline also. It says in Proverbs 3, let me jump over there real fast. This is what I'm talking about when it says, how do we receive God's rod and staff? That changes everything. Proverbs 3 is also quoted in Hebrews chapter 12. So it's repeated again, so we know its value, we know its importance. It says in Proverbs 3, verse 11, my son, do not despise the Lord's discipline or be weary of his reproof, for the Lord reproves him whom he loves, as a father the son in whom he delights. How have we received the rod of our shepherd when he has disciplined us for our disobedience and sinfulness? I feel like a lot of times we've received it as proof he doesn't like me, rejection of me. We received it as his anger. We've received it as he's done with me. God's through with me. This is why all this stuff is happening to me. We've received it as his indifference. God just doesn't really actually care. That's not very comforting. None of that is comforting. I can't receive God's discipline saying this means God hates me, this means God's rejected me, this means God doesn't care at all, and be comforted by that, right? I can't. That's not comforting. But the psalmist said, your rod and your staff, they comfort me. So how should I receive the Lord's discipline? Well, as it's intended, as the scripture says in the Old and New Testament, it means. What does he say it means? He says it means he loves you and you're one of his children. That's what the word says. And so kind of like the person that misunderstood you and received it one way when you meant it another way, We're struggling with those exact same things daily when it comes to our interactions with the Lord, and when he disciplines us because he loves us, because we are a child that he loves and favors and wants good for, we decided to receive that as, he hates me. God doesn't care about me. God doesn't love me. God's abandoned me. So I think you are seeing that how one way it can be received as comfort, like, wow, God really loves me that he wouldn't let me just go headfirst into that sin. He actually disciplined me and brought me out of that. He did not let that go well over there when I was walking away from him. He really loves me. I'm his child, right? A lot of parents in here. You do not discipline other people's kids when they're messing up, because you're like, that's your gig, bud. That's not mine. Like if that ends up poorly, that's on y'all over there. But on our own child? Oh no, high standard. The highest standard of me personally. I'm going to hold my kid to a higher standard than I hold anybody else's child, because I know my child and I love my child and I want what's best for my child. And that's how God's interacting with us when it comes to discipline and the rod that should be comforting to us, knowing God's not letting me get away with stuff. He's not going to let me go away from him. He's gonna wreck that. Every time I feel like I've got this and I'm going to go do my own thing over here and pursue my own pleasure, my own happiness right now, man, that ends poorly. I wonder why. Because I have a God that loves me and that is comforting. So even though things look bad, and even though this is a tough spot, and even though I don't like what's happening right now, I'll fear no evil, for God is with me, because his rod and his staff, they comfort me, because it's proof that I'm his child and he loves me. Creek should really worry, Kimber should really worry if they're able to just be completely disobedient, do whatever they want, and I don't say anything. That's concerning. It's like, whoa, do you not care? Nah. How we receive God's rod and staff changes everything. What was the staff? Staff was guidance. The staff was restoration. It's interesting, as I'm reading this, it made me think a lot of times about possibly me. The staff had this specific crook in the end of it, right? And why was that? Because they were in rocky terrain. A lot of times a little lamb or a sheep would fall off an edge and get stuck somewhere. So that crook was made specifically where it fit over the neck but not over the head, so they could grab a sheep by its neck and pull him up. So just had his head stuck in it, and I feel like a lot of times God's picked me up by my head and just pulled me out of something. Like, oh, it hurts, it's choking me. But that was out of love and very specific, right? It was like, that was God's guidance saying, see, you're stuck there. It's like, that can be comforting to me if I want to receive it that way. How has God's guidance been received by us? Well, a lot of times it's been received as old-fashioned, outdated, and doesn't pertain to 2020. God's guidance, right? God's instruction to us, the word, that at times was received as his word, the most important, perfect, good for us word. It is now old-fashioned, or it's unnecessary, or it's too difficult, or there's too many rules. That's why I don't want to be a Christian, all the rules. I can receive it that way and not be comforted at all by God's guidance, right? This book doesn't comfort me. It makes me feel bad. That's your choice. But when you walk through the valley, even though life runs into you, what's going to be your comfort? What's going to be your guide? What's going to be the thing that helps you survive and walk through it? It's his guidance. It's his rod and his staff. And how we receive that changes everything. So maybe the valley you're walking through is all internal, right? I feel worthless. I feel like nobody cares. I feel like I've been rejected by family, by friends. Or I feel like God's let me go. He's not providing for my family, taking care of my family the way I thought he would. I feel these things. I'm overwhelmed. I want to quit. Right? I know, like I said, a lot of the pastor's circle, it's like every day that ends with why, we're trying to figure out what's another way I could survive financially, not pastoring, right? And that's the valley that we're walking through. But God's not giving up on you. Don't give up on him. He's still there to guide you. He's still there to comfort you. He's still there to protect you. So you can walk through this valley and fear no evil. Just keep going. Every valley can be walked through. Or maybe your valley is physical. Like my friend Dewey, maybe it's a medical diagnosis. Maybe it's financial troubles. Maybe it's marriage trouble. Maybe it's children trouble. Maybe it's a friend thing. Maybe it's a real physical thing. You can fear no evil because God is with you, and he's going to work all things together for the good of those that love him and are called according to his purpose. If we will accept his guidance as good and comforting and not cumbersome and overbearing and outdated, I can move forward and fear no evil. This kind of faith, we like to call it a defiant faith. If you're a Texan, that should resonate with you. We love being defiant. We're big fans of that, right? Right? We love that stuff. Guys, let's tell the enemy, not scared. I'll fear no evil because I have a God who has already put you to public shame and triumphed over you when he raised Jesus from the dead. I have a God that created the universe and has control of all things. He is the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end, even though I will fear no evil. My defiant faith goes against the enemy and says, man, put me in prison, I'll sing praises. You want to kill me? I'll forgive the people that are my murderers. You want to give me a cancer diagnosis? I'll say, it's all right. I don't know how other people survive without God. I'm okay. If you want to take my daughter, this is the day that the Lord has made. We'll rejoice and be glad in it. Even though. Is that the faith I want? That's the faith I want to live with. Right? Lean not on your own understandings, but in all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make your paths straight. So guys, to close, whatever you're walking through, whatever that valley is, maybe you're coming out of a valley, maybe you're entering a valley, maybe you're in the middle of it, I don't know, but keep going. God is with you, and if things aren't panning out and you feel like you're being disciplined and punished, press into Jesus and say, is this you letting my faith be tested, or is this you saying, get back on the path? Either way, I'm going to be comforted by your interaction, God, because I know that you're in control and you're in charge, and your rod and your staff, your discipline and your instruction, they comfort me. Stay into the word, stay in prayer, stay in fellowship with believers to be encouraged. And let's keep walking and keep going. And even though, whatever it is, we don't have to fear evil. But God is with us. Let's pray.